Old Testament figures point to Jesus. You're going to read this in Hebrews. When you see a priest, Jesus is our great high priest. When you see a king, Jesus is King of Kings. When you see a sage is a wise man or a wise woman. There's an entire genre of literature in the Old Testament called the wisdom literature. Psalms, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, Job, and the Song of Solomon. Much of that comes from the man who is considered, other than Christ, to be the wisest man in the history of the world. Do you know his name? His name is Solomon. And he gives us the wisdom literature. He's wise. Jesus comes along and he has this insane statement. He said, one wiser than Solomon is here. When Solomon talked, everybody took notes. When Jesus talked, Solomon would be the one taking the notes. Let me say this too. Okay, I feel like I'm supposed to say this. You're not that wise. Some of you say, neither are you, Pastor Mark. Oh, I didn't claim to be. But what we all tend to think is, I'm very wise. And if Jesus says, I'm wiser than Solomon, Solomon's wiser than us, we should definitely listen to Jesus. I would encourage you, don't argue with Jesus, listen to him. Don't disagree with him, obey him. Additionally, when you see judges, it tells us Jesus is coming to judge the living and the dead, and we'll all stand before him in the end. When you see shepherds, Jesus is the good shepherd. And when you see prophets like Moses proclaiming the word of God, well, Jesus Christ is the greater Moses and the greatest prophet. Let me come all the way back to the beginning. We started in Hebrews 3. Moses and Jesus, they're similar, but Jesus is infinitely greater. And Moses was a little shadow, and Jesus is the great fulfillment. I'm going to read these to you in closing, just to help you get the contours of the Word of God in your mind, how the whole Bible is about and pointing to and longing for and satisfied in and fulfilled by Jesus Christ. Number one, when Moses was a baby boy, the Egyptian government ordered the mass killing of Hebrew boys ages 2 and under. When Jesus was a boy, the Roman government did the exact same thing. Moses grew up in Egypt as a boy. Jesus' family fled to Egypt, where he also grew up as a boy. Number 3, Moses was laid in a straw-thatched basket as a baby, and Jesus was laid in a straw-thatched manger as a baby. Number 4, Moses left his position of royalty to humbly serve people, and Jesus did the same when he came from heaven to earth. Number 5, God spoke to Moses through a burning bush, and Jesus was the God who spoke. Number 6, God did supernatural signs and wonders to verify the ministry and authority of both Moses and Jesus. 7, Moses turned water into blood. Jesus turned water into wine. 8, God parted the Red Sea for Moses. Jesus calmed the Sea of Galilee. Number 9, Moses brought a nation out of demonic bondage into freedom so they could worship God. And Jesus has done the same thing for every nation. 10, Moses gave us the law. Jesus came to fulfill the law. 11, Moses and Jesus both spent time in the wilderness to prepare for their respective ministries. Number 12, Moses chose 12 spies to serve his ministry, and Jesus chose 12 disciples to serve his ministry. 13, God supernaturally fed people in the days of Moses, and he did the same kind of thing, performing provision miracles of food in the days of Jesus. Number 14, Moses carried God's presence in the Ark of the Covenant, and Jesus carried God's presence in his body. And 15, Jesus came down from heaven to meet with Moses when he was on the earth, and Moses later came down from heaven to meet with Jesus when he was on the earth.